Good morning, everybody. Orange J here with another War of the Visions video, and the countdown is like hours from being over. Very, very soon, people are going to be able to start pulling for Cloud, going to start building their Tifas. Final Fantasy VII collaboration is like here-ish. So I got one more video, the final countdown video. Cue the music that would get DMCA'd. The final countdown video of this collaboration, where I'm going to take Cloud, our new two-handed sword user in Global, and I'm going to compare him to our other level 120 two-handed sword users and see where he stacks up against like Orin, against Belrick, the newer, like really strong kind of slept on unit, and against Uldoa, because don't forget about Uldoa, because you know I didn't forget about Uldoa for this video. Anyway, let's check out Cloud. Let's see how he compares to our other big sword users in Global. Let's check that out right now. All right, let's start this video off with a big shout out to the members on YouTube and the patrons on Patreon. Thank you guys for your continued support. Some of you have been here like since the beginning. This has been quite the ride, and thank you all for coming along on that journey. Y'all are awesome. Now, I want to talk about how I'm going to do this comparison. I'm comparing Cloud to the 120 Greatsword users that we have in Global. That's Uldoa, Orin, and Belrick. What I did for this comparison is I equipped each of them with what I think are their two best support abilities, and I equipped them all with their best in slot sword. For Cloud, that's going to be the Buster Sword. For Uldoa, it's the Golden Blade. For Orin and Belrick, it is Orin's sword, the Shimmering Blade. Now, like, I'm assuming there, if you took the time to build one of these units to 120, you also took the time to farm a sword for them. With Belrick, I get it. If you started playing later, you missed out on Orin's sword. Okay, you could swap in a Golden Blade in that case, and that would be fine. So that's what I have them equipped with. No gear besides the sword, no espers, no vision cards, just their support abilities and the sword. So let's look at the stats with that in mind. And let's start by, there's Cloud on the left. He's the big one. Let's look at Cloud's HP compared to the other three. Cloud's coming in at 3941 HP. That's way better than Uldoa, and you know, you would expect Cloud to be way better than Uldoa. It's a little bit better than Orin, and not quite as good as Belrick. So Cloud's HP definitely is on the level with who I would consider the two best great sword users in Global to this point, Orin and Belrick. And guys, if you're sleeping on Belrick, quit sleeping on Belrick. That dude is actually OP. Now, attack. That's obviously going to be a big stat, but remember with Cloud, attack doesn't tell the whole story. He's at 801 attack. Compared to the other three units, that is way south of their score. However, keep in mind, those other three units are all using some form of self-sacrifice to get their attacks that high. Uldoa has a buffed up version of self-sacrificed. Orin and Belrick are just running the regular version. That's a massive attack steroid, and it's really helping those other three get their attack stats. I mean, they're almost approaching 1,000 attack on each one of those units without espers and vision cards. That's insane. So, Cloud at 801 without self-sacrifice is pretty respectable, but notice I've put everybody's defense pin on the screen here too. Cloud is at 60 defense pin just from his support abilities and weapon. Uldoa is at 0, Orin is at 40, which is pretty dang respectable, and Belrick is at 25, which is pretty nice for him. So when you start thinking about that, Cloud will probably already do more damage to a higher defense target than the other three, just considering that defense pin. And remember, this is without like Uldoa's TMR activation or any sort of like vision card setup, anything like that. Okay, or buffs, excuse me, or without any buffs equipped. So let's continue. Agility is going to be another big stat for these. Cloud's at 68. That is the best of these agilities, and it's the best by quite a bit. Like, Uldoa is pretty close there at 64, but it's Uldoa. Orin's at 58. That's considerably slower than Cloud. Belrick's at 61, which is kind of a nice middle ground here. But Cloud going to be faster than the other three. Dexterity and luck, Cloud has a really nice dexterity compared to the other three, although it's, again, he's better than Uldoa. The other two are pretty comparable. Luck, Cloud is actually a little bit south of the other two, but, you know, that is what it is. Cloud's not an evasion unit, right? In fact, none of these people besides Uldoa are going to have any sort of evasion build typically, and I've tried evasion Uldoa before. It's not super good. Okay, defense, spirit, Cloud 0, 0, Orin actually bringing 6 defense and 10 spirit's pretty nice, and Belrick bringing 6 defense is also pretty nice. So Cloud not as much of a bruiser as the other two maybe, at least as far as defense and spirit goes. Resist, they're all elementally specific, like they all got 20 that they're good against and 10 that they're minus 10 that they're bad against, so that's nothing. Now, resist, this is where Cloud closes the gap on the other two, Orin and Belrick, who had more defense and spirit. Cloud, remember, does not have to run self-sacrifice to get his attack up to 801. So his resists are a lot better than the other 3 units. Cloud's really not weak to anything, except he's a little bit weak to magic. Although is weak to pierce, she's not really strong to anything. She's really weak to magic. Orin is like neutral to a lot of things and very weak to pierce and strike. Belrick, kind of the same story, very weak to magic, and then, you know, basically neutral to everything else. So resist-wise, Cloud is in a better spot than the other 3, in my opinion. Cloud also getting 45 lightning attack from his sword. Now, Orin and Belrick are also getting 45 ice attack from their master abilities and from Orin's sword. Remember, Cloud, Orin, and Belrick are new enough units that they're getting that elemental attack buff from their master abilities. Oldoa is an old unit. She doesn't have that master ability. So a big missing piece to that Oldoa stat line is that elemental attack. The other 3 are rocking 45 elemental attack. Oldoa's sitting at nothing, and that sucks for her. Then all of them have their like resist that they're specifically like strong against. None of what, like, paralyze resist is really good on Cloud, I think, and then disable resist is really good. Belrick has a little bit of disable resist. Orin has that disable resist and the paralyze resist, and in fact, Orin's affliction resistances are actually really comparable to Cloud's. But overall, I think you can see kind of the story that these stats are telling. Cloud has better resist than the other 3, and even though they have higher attack scores, Cloud has more defense pin and better attack type resistances because he's not running self-sacrifice with his support abilities. So there you go. Those are those 3 units equipped with what I believe are their best support abilities and their best weapons. Now, let's look at their skills and kind of finish telling this story a little bit if we can. Alright, let's jump into Oldoa's skills and see if she even has a chance of competing with Cloud, because I don't think that she does. Oldoa does have Bane Self-Sacrifice, which I do think is a really good move. It helps her get her attack up that high, 60% attack for only an 8% decrease in her resistances and an increase in HP. But Oldoa really struggles to penetrate the enemy's defenses and slash resist. Like, you'll just notice a couple things missing if you were to go through Oldoa's skills here really closely. She's basically all slashing damage, right? She does have, she has Drain Force, which is her only attack that, like, has a way of hitting the enemy without being, like, like a slashing attack, but it scales off of HP. She's not a particularly high HP unit, and her Drain Force isn't super effective. Other than that, it's really tough for her to actually get damage down on the enemy. She does have some defense debuffs down here in her assassin job, but these are debuffs. These are not penetration, so things like defense debuff resistance, like you see on Summer Elsorel, will just negate these in a lot of ways. And she has to be very, very close to use something like Marauder's Blade or Armor Cleaver. They're one-range abilities. She has another defense debuff in her Limit Break, but it's 43 AP, and it also doesn't have much range on it. So, overall, Oldoa not even close to being as good as Cloud is. She's an older unit, she lacks the new Elemental Mastery ability, and she's not going to have a way of penetrating the enemy's defense or another damage type to get around slash resist. So Cloud, way better than Oldoa, but that's not a big shocker. Let's move on to Orin. Okay, now when we're looking at Orin, let's see how much like defense pin Orin can get, and then what kind of attacks he can do that compare with Cloud. Now, Orin can potentially get up to 80 defense penetration by having 40 from One-Eyed Swordsman, and if you go all the way down to the bottom here, all the way down, he can get another 40 from his Limit Break, which is a nice ranged AoE move, the Fire Tornado, that is used by an ice unit. It's a really interesting idea that an ice uses fire. I don't know, I don't get it, whatever. Okay, anyway, he can get 80 defense pin by stacking those two things. He can also get defense pin from his Pugilist subjob, which is 20, and he can get defense pin from Entrust the Future, which is 20. But none of these buffs will stack. He can get the 40 from his support ability, and then one of these other buffs. Whichever one is the highest will overwrite the others. So he will have about 60 to 80 defense pin, depending on what moves he's done. Cloud has no problem hitting 100, 100 plus, so edge to Cloud there. Now, Auron has nice accuracy and crit rate, has 100% hit move, Banishing Blade, but it's shorter range than Cloud's and is only a 2-hit combo, whereas Cloud's is an AoE with longer range and a 3-hit combo. So I do like Cloud's 100% hit abilities better, but neither one of them will struggle to kill evasion units. In fact, Auron is going to be very, very good against 2B and Tifa, so I expect to see a lot of Auron running around as kind of a counter to the evasion wind girls that are coming up. Auron does also have a second damage type with Pugilist here. Cloud has a second damage type with his missile damage. Oh my gosh, my words are going away. So Auron brings striking damage, Cloud brings missile damage. I think in general striking damage is better than missile damage. However, Cloud's missile damage synergizes really, really well with like Frederica, Nivlu, these lightning missile units that are really good. I do think Cloud and Auron are a pretty decent comparison to each other in general. However, I still expect Cloud to be a better unit than Auron is, but not by a ton. I know some people are Auron haters out there, but trust me, you guys, there are people who have been using Auron faithfully for months, like ever since Final Fantasy X, and a well-built Auron who uses his skills right just eats units alive. He's pretty tanky. I'll call him pretty bruisery, but I also expect Cloud to be like that. And Cloud might even be slightly more of a bruiser unit than Auron is. We'll see. Cloud has reflex that Auron doesn't have, and reflex is OP. It just adds tankiness to a unit. Okay. Auron, also I want to point out, has to use bells. Like, Auron is a unit that just needs bells, whereas Cloud can use Uldo's TMR. Auron cannot use that item, so Auron kind of eats the bells for your group, and he's a lot slower than Cloud. Cloud can just equip Uldo's TMR. He has 10 more agility than Auron does, just walking into a fight, so I like Cloud in that area too. Okay, there's the comparison. Let's move on to Belrick, the last one. Okay, now when we're talking about if Belrick is going to be as good as Cloud, let's start with his master ability, because this is where Belrick just gets 25 defense pin. That's a really, really good master ability in my opinion. And then when we go look at his skills, you can see that he could just ramp up his attack. He runs self-sacrifice for 60% buff, Nightblade secret arts for 30 more percent, plus a bunch of accuracy and an increase in healing power. And that increase in healing power is a big deal for Belrick. So Belrick can have a ton of attack with 25 defense pin, but how high can he get that defense pin? Can he compete with Cloud's 100 plus with like the addition of Uldo's TMR or something like that? And Belrick, first of all, cannot wear Uldo's TMR. He's another unit that kind of needs to use bells to really function well, and he can get another 40 defense pin though from his limit break, and Belrick's limit break is very good. Shattering Creation has a nice range of 3, but it is single target. 200% damage though, but it will stun the target, or I'm sorry, it will inflict disable for 3 turns on the target, better than stun. This is really, really good. This dude walks out there and drops a big time damage disable that buffs his defense pin by 40. You guys, I'm telling you, Belrick is like secretly a super, super good unit. Now, his alternative damage type to slash is Pugilist. So just like Auron, Belrick has access to strike damage, whereas Cloud has access to missile damage. Belrick's strike damage is a little different than Auron's. He does not have that defense penetration buff. He's going to get that from like his limit break or from a buff in his main job that we'll look at here in just a second. However, Belrick can become kind of a bruiser through his Pugilist job with a defense and HP buff. He also has breathing technique, which will restore a little bit of HP. He has Spirit Breaker, Demon Purger. These are hard-hitting physical damage striking moves that give him a great alternative to slashing damage. Now, if we look at Belrick's main job here, what else can he do? He can buff Pierce and Missile Resist, which is a nice addition to his kit. He also has a physical damage 50% barrier. Yes, there are a lot of barrier breaks in the game, but making your opponent break that barrier is really useful. And if they don't happen to have a barrier break, or they're just hitting your tank with an AoE, these barriers are very, very effective. So I really like that. Belrick is a very effective bruiser against physical units, whereas Cloud relies a lot on like reflex, I think, to live a lot in some certain situations, and I don't know that for sure yet. Like, I haven't played with Cloud, but I think reflex is going to be an important part of him staying alive. Belrick has more consistent options, right? The barrier, the resistance buffs, etc. Now, he does not critically have a 100% hit attack in his main job. That is something where Auron has an advantage over him and Cloud has an advantage over him, but he does get a nice bit of accuracy from a support ability. Belrick's bread and butter is this, Drain Assault, and they just nerfed this thing on Global because it was healing him for like 10,000 damage every time he did it. It is a 3-hit attack with a nice range on it that absorbs 60% of the damage done. Even at 60% of the damage done, this is oftentimes enough healing to full heal the unit. So you can see how Belrick works. He's a bruisery guy, especially against physical, and then he just full heals himself with Drain Assault. Now, he can get another 20 defense pin here and slash attack up 40 with his concentration buff. This is a really good buff. And so overall, I think Belrick is going to be like the closest thing to Cloud in terms of power. Belrick is really, really strong. I am scared of Belrick in something like Guild Wars right now. A well-built Belrick just destroys physical teams. Like, he just eats them alive. So if Cloud is as good as Belrick, Cloud is going to be doing that same thing. It's going to be slightly different. Belrick has Pugilist, Cloud has missile attacks, so that is a different thing there. But I do think they're comparable in threat, but very different in execution. Cloud raiding barrages, sharpshoots, or closing the gap with all of his defense pin and just being this heavy, heavy hitter. Cloud has more defense penetration than any of these other units, so anybody relying on that is not going to have a good day. Now, slash resistance might still be pretty effective against Cloud. Maybe consider working in like the Halloween vision card that gives that slash resistance penetration. Something like that, I don't know. I'm excited to find out. And you know what? There it is. That was me just very briefly comparing Cloud to the other 3 level 120 Greatsword users we have in the global right now. I think he's clearly way better than Eldoa. I do think he's going to be slightly better than Auron, but I think Belrick is also slightly better than Auron. So I'm curious to see if Cloud will be like as powerful, as strong of a unit to use as Belrick is, because Belrick, I'm telling you guys, Belrick is scary. This has kind of turned into a Belrick advertisement, which I didn't know it was going to be when I started filming it. So let me know what you think about all that in the comments. If I missed something that you think is important, put it in the comments. I might just pin it. Mostly this is like my last exciting video before Final Fantasy VII drops. I'll be pulling on stream tomorrow morning, so show up to that if you want to see my pulls live. Otherwise, I'll be uploading them, and that video will drop like the next day or something like that. So there you go, y'all. Good luck on your pulls. I hope y'all pull Cloud like easy. I hope he just comes home for all of you super easy if you're going for him. And I hope you have a ton of fun with the Final Fantasy VII event. Like T-minus just a few hours. So I'll see y'all in game. Peace.